Most intelligent people don't lose arguments. They lose interest in explaining. You keep clarifying, and somehow you feel less understood every time. By the end, you'll understand why your mind stops pleading for recognition and how to respond with calm power instead. Have you ever walked away from a conversation thinking, no matter what I say, they'll never see me? This video isn't about winning debates. It's about a quiet turning point. The moment a person realizes explaining isn't always communication. Sometimes it's negotiation, and the more you negotiate for basic respect, the more you train people to treat you like a courtroom instead of a human being. We're going to talk about why intelligent people, especially the ones who think deeply, notice patterns, and care about being accurate, eventually stop performing their thoughts for the room. Not because they become cold, not because they think they're better, but because they understand something sharp about human nature. Some people don't want clarity, they want control. And once you see that, your whole social life starts to reorganize. Here's where we're going. First, we'll uncover the hidden trap behind over-explaining, why it feels responsible, but slowly becomes self-erasure. Then we'll talk about the real reason people push you to explain yourself again and again, what they're actually testing when they say, just explain it. Then we'll enter the hard part, why being misunderstood can become a kind of loneliness, and why that loneliness is also a doorway. Finally, you'll get a practical framework, ethical, simple, grounded, so you know when to speak, when to stop, and how to hold your boundaries without turning bitter. Because this is not a be silent to look mysterious video. We're not doing manipulation. This is about self-respect and about choosing the right place for your mind to land. Think about the office setting. You say a clear point in a meeting, someone twists it just a little, you start correcting. They ask for one more clarification. Now you're explaining your explanation, and suddenly the room isn't listening to your idea anymore. They're watching you defend your right to have one. Hold that image. Now think about home. You try to explain why something hurt you. You choose your words carefully. You even soften the edges so nobody feels attacked. And still, you're met with, you're too sensitive. Or, that's not what I meant. Or worse, you're making a big deal out of nothing. So you explain again and again. Not because you love talking, because you still believe somewhere inside that the right sentence will finally make them care. But here's the first uncomfortable truth. Some conversations are not missing information. They're missing good faith. And if there's no good faith, your best explanation becomes fuel. In this video, you'll learn how to spot that moment. The moment explaining turns into a trap, and how to step out of it without rage, without drama, without losing yourself. You won't need to become louder. You won't need to become colder. You'll become clearer. And that clarity will change what you tolerate, what you answer, and what you leave behind. Because the real problem isn't what you think. The main concept is simple. Over-explaining is often a sign you've handed someone the power to approve your reality. Here's the metaphor. Imagine you're standing in front of a mirror trying to adjust your face so the reflection finally agrees with you. You tilt your head, you change the light, you repeat yourself. But the mirror isn't broken. It's just not a person. Some people behave like mirrors that don't reflect. They distort. And when you keep explaining yourself to them, you're not communicating. You're trying to win a reflection. This is where many intelligent people make an honest mistake. They assume, if I make my logic clearer, the misunderstanding will end. That works with honest people. It works in math. It works in engineering. It works in a healthy relationship. But in certain social situations, the misunderstanding isn't accidental. It's strategic. And here's the first reveal. People don't always ask for explanations because they're confused. Sometimes they ask because your confidence threatens their position. Not threatens in a dramatic way, in a quiet way. Your clarity forces them to face themselves. Your boundary exposes their entitlement. Your calm makes their chaos look obvious. So they do something subtle. They pull you into the arena of justify yourself. Because once you're justifying, you're no longer standing. You're leaning. Nietzsche wrote about strength and resentment, about how people who feel powerless often try to reduce what they can't reach. not with direct violence, but with moral pressure, ridicule, and constant questioning. In modern life, it can look very polite, very reasonable. Why are you like that? Explain what you mean. Okay, but prove it. Don't be dramatic. Just explain. And if you're a thoughtful person, you take that seriously. You think you're being responsible. But notice what happens internally. Your nervous system shifts. Your chest tightens. Your voice changes. You start performing sanity, like you're on trial for being human. This is why intelligent people eventually stop explaining themselves. Not because they have nothing to say, because they finally see the pattern. If someone is determined to misunderstand you, your words become a treadmill. You run harder, but you don't move. Now here's the twist. When you stop explaining, it can feel like you're giving up. But it's not giving up. It's choosing your audience. It's realizing my truth isn't a petition. My boundary isn't a debate. My inner world isn't public property. Hold that thought, because the next question is the one that matters. How do you tell the difference between a person who needs clarity and a person who needs you to shrink? We'll break that down. And once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it. You explain yourself, and it makes things worse. You clarify your intention. They accuse your tone. You correct the detail. They attack the motive. You leave the conversation feeling exhausted, like you spent your whole intelligence just trying to stay misunderstood proof. Because some people don't listen to understand. They listen to locate weakness, not in a villain way, in a human way. When someone feels insecure, your clarity can make them feel exposed. So they try to regain control by turning your idea into a problem. And the quickest way to do that is to force you into defense mode. Defense mode is expensive. It drains your tone. It steals your calm. It makes you sound emotionally involved, so they can label you emotional. This is the social trap. The more you care about being understood, the easier you are to pull. Now the micro story, a meeting, a simple proposal. Someone presents an efficient plan, clear steps, realistic timeline, respectful language. Nothing arrogant, just clean thinking. A colleague interrupts with a small smile. I'm not sure I understand. Can you explain what you really mean? At first, the person explains, politely. Then again with examples, then again with context. Every time the colleague moves the goalpost. Now the room is no longer evaluating the plan. They're evaluating the speaker's emotional stability. The speaker feels it happen in real time, so they tighten their logic. They add more details. They become even more careful, and that's the moment the trap closes. Because the colleague was never confused. They were fishing for hesitation, for contradiction, for that one sentence they could frame as, see? They don't even know what they're saying. Eventually, the speaker pauses, not angry, not dramatic, just still. They say something like, I've explained it clearly. If you want to disagree, disagree, but I'm not going to keep restating the same point. In that moment, something changes. The room feels the difference between explaining and standing. And here's what surprises people. Silence doesn't make you weaker. It reveals who was relying on your anxiety. But here's the twist, because this is the part that scares good people. When you stop explaining, some people call it attitude. They might say you're arrogant. They might say you think you're smarter. So how do you hold your ground without becoming the thing they accuse you of being? Hold that thought, because Act 2 is where the emotional cost shows up. You start shrinking your truth to keep the peace. You learn which parts of you cause conflict, your depth, your boundaries, your calm. No. So you edit yourself. You add disclaimers. You soften every sentence. You explain your feelings before you're even allowed to have them. And after a while, you don't feel seen. You feel managed. Reason. Because over-explaining is often a form of people-pleasing in intellectual clothing. It looks like maturity, but internally, it's fear of fallout. Fear that if you don't explain perfectly, you'll be punished with misunderstanding, or distance, or gossip, or emotional withdrawal. The mind starts acting like a translator for the soul. How can I say this in a way that won't trigger them? But there's a cost. When you over-explain, you teach others that your boundaries are negotiable. You teach them that no is the beginning of a conversation, not the end of one. Now the micro-story, home setting. Someone brings up something that bothered them, calmly, not accusing, not shouting, just, "When that happened, I felt dismissed." The other person responds, "You always take things the wrong way." So the first person explains, "I'm not saying you're a bad person, I'm just saying it hurt. Here's why. Here's the context. Here's what I meant." They speak gently. They even take blame they don't fully own. They do everything right. And still, the response is, "You're overthinking." So they explain again, more carefully, more kindly, more painfully. But what they're actually doing is begging for permission to feel. And that's where intelligence becomes a curse, because a smart mind can always find another angle, another explanation, another justification. You can build a whole TED Talk just to say, "Please don't dismiss me." And the more you do that, the less you respect yourself. Not because explaining is wrong, explaining is beautiful in the right place, but because you're explaining to someone who benefits from not understanding. Here's the uncomfortable part. Some people need you to be wrong so they can stay comfortable, so they keep you talking until you sound uncertain. And uncertainty is the opening they wanted. At some point, intelligent people recognize this and make a decision. I will not turn my inner world into a debate club. They stop begging. They stop pleading. They stop offering 12 reasons for one boundary. They choose fewer words and stronger ones. But here's the twist. When you stop explaining at home, it can feel like you're losing closeness, because explaining felt like love. It felt like effort. So what replaces it? How do you stay warm while becoming unshakable? This is where most people get it wrong. You become quiet, and people finally reveal what they wanted from you. When you stop explaining, the noise changes. Some people become curious, in a good way. They lean in. They ask honest questions. They adjust. Others become irritated. They accuse you of changing. They miss the old version of you, the version that overfunctioned in conversations. Reason: because your explanations were never just information. They were emotional labor. They were you doing the work of making other people comfortable with your mind. And the final reveal is this. Intelligent people stop explaining themselves when they realize their self-respect is worth more than being understood by the wrong crowd. Nietzsche's shadow here is simple. When you keep lowering yourself for approval, you don't become loved. You become usable, and people who resent your strength will always prefer you in pieces. Micro-story, solitude after the storm. Someone sits alone after another draining conversation. Not dramatic, just tired. They replay what they said, what they should have said, the perfect sentence they didn't find. Then they notice something. They weren't trying to be clear. They were trying to be safe. So next time, they try a new response. Not cold, not cruel, clean. They say, "I've shared what I mean. If that doesn't work for you, that's okay." And the room goes quiet, because that sentence doesn't offer a debate. It offers a boundary. And here's what changes. Their body stays calm. Their voice stays steady. They don't chase the other person's approval. They leave the conversation with their dignity intact. Now, practical takeaways. Ethical, grounded, real. Explain once, clarify once, then stop. If someone is acting in good faith, one clarification is enough. If they're not, a 10th explanation won't save you. Watch for moving goalposts. If your clarity keeps getting misheard in a way that always makes you look worse, that's not confusion. That's control wearing a polite face. Hold that line. Replace defending with stating. Instead of, "I didn't mean it like that. What I meant was," try, "That's not accurate." Short, calm, no extra fuel. Choose your circles like you choose your diet. Your mind needs clean environments. If every conversation turns into a trial, you will start living in defense mode. Protect your mental oxygen. Let silence do its honest work. Silence is not revenge. It's a signal. I won't perform myself for you. People who respect you will adjust. People who used you will protest. Here's the closing loop, the identity shift. You don't stop explaining because you don't care. You stop explaining because you finally do. You care about your peace. You care about your energy. You care about being real without having to prove you're real. If this hit something true in you, stay close to this channel. Subscribe if you want more calm, heavy truths like this, without noise, without gimmicks. You don't owe everyone access. And remember, the strongest version of you doesn't talk more. It stands more. And that's the quiet mic drop.